Story 1. Monster Girls Hostel. A true horror story. Introduction. Serenity Hall stood atop a mist-covered hill like a grand sentinel, its Gothic architecture casting long shadows over the town below. It was a place of prestige, attracting the brightest young women from across the country to study at its nearby university. Yet, for all its allure, the hostel had a peculiar reputation. Rumors of odd rules, whispered warnings, and disappearances haunted its legacy. Most students brushed it off as urban legend, too enthralled by the promise of a bright future to care. Among the new arrivals was Maya, a literature student with big dreams. She was drawn to Serenity Hall for its history and charm, but soon found herself entangled in a horrifying mystery that would test her courage and sanity. Chapter 1. The Arrival. Maya stepped out of the taxi, her suitcase wobbling as she looked up at Serenity Hall. The sprawling stone building was beautiful yet imposing, with ivy crawling up its weathered facade and pointed towers clawing at the sky. She felt a chill that wasn't from the cold mountain air. "Serenity Hall," the cab driver muttered, shaking his head. "Strange place, this. Don't break the rules, miss." "What rules?" Maya asked, but the driver only sped off without answering. Inside, the hostel was a mix of old-world charm and modern convenience. The grand staircase creaked under her feet as she made her way to her room. She was introduced to her roommates, Aaliyah, a bubbly extrovert, Rhea, pragmatic and skeptical, and Sarah, an enigmatic artist who barely spoke. Despite their differences, the four bonded quickly over their shared excitement for the new semester. Ms. Vidya, the strict matron, outlined the rules during orientation. "No mirrors after midnight," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Never enter the West Wing. Curfew is at 10 p.m. sharp." The girls exchanged amused glances. The rules seemed arbitrary, but they promised to follow them, for now. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Night. On her second night, Maya awoke to a faint sound. It was like someone whispering her name, soft but insistent. She sat up, her eyes adjusting to the darkness. Across the room, Aaliyah stirred. "Did you hear that?" Maya whispered. "Hear what?" Aaliyah yawned, but Maya wasn't imagining things. The whispers grew louder, coming from the direction of the mirror on the wardrobe. She approached it cautiously, her reflection flickering unnaturally. Before she could investigate further, Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "Don't," Sarah said from her bed, her voice trembling. "Just don't." The next morning, Sarah revealed her own strange experience. "I've been having nightmares," she admitted. "In them, there are faces, distorted, monstrous faces, watching me through mirrors." The group dismissed it as stress, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Chapter 3. The Forbidden Wing. Curiosity got the better of them. One evening, the girls decided to explore the West Wing, breaking one of the cardinal rules. The air grew colder as they ventured into the abandoned section, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. They stumbled upon a locked room, its door marked with strange symbols. Aaliyah, ever the daredevil, found a way to pry it open. Inside, they discovered a journal belonging to a former student named Priya. The entries detailed bizarre occurrences, mirrors that seemed to breathe, shadows with minds of their own, and the presence of something called the Feeders. One entry chilled them to the bone. "They come through the mirrors at night. They thrive on our fears, feeding on our very souls. Breaking the mirror is the only way to stop them, but it comes at a price." The girls decided to leave, but not before Rhea found a dust-covered mirror and wiped it clean. As she did, her reflection grinned at her, even though she hadn't smiled. She screamed, and the girls ran back to their room. Chapter 4. The Legend of Serenity Hall. Unable to ignore the strangeness any longer, Maya confronted Ms. Vidya. "There's something wrong with this place," she said. "What are you hiding?" The matron hesitated but finally relented. "This hostel is cursed," she said. "Years ago, a group of girls disappeared without a trace. Rumors say they were taken by the feeders, malevolent spirits that manifest through mirrors. They prey on the insecurities of young women, using their fears to consume them. That's why the rules exist, to keep you safe." Maya shared this information with the others. While Rhea remained skeptical, Sarah seemed deeply disturbed. "It's true," Sarah whispered. "I've seen them in my dreams." Chapter 5. The First Victim. That night, Aaliyah went missing. Her bed was empty and the mirror above her dresser was shattered, a bloodied handprint smeared across its surface. The remaining girls were frantic. "She's gone," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "They've taken her." Determined to save their friend, Maya suggested they use the journals to find a way to confront the feeders. Together, they pieced together a plan. They needed to enter the mirror realm and destroy the feeders from within. But it was a dangerous gambit, one that could cost them their lives. Chapter 6. Into the Mirror. Using a ritual described in Priya's journal, the girls activated the mirror. Its surface rippled like water, and they stepped through, entering a twisted version of Serenity Hall. The walls were alive, pulsing and whispering their deepest fears. Maya was confronted by visions of her childhood trauma, while Rhea faced the specter of failure. Sarah, however, seemed almost resigned, as if she had expected this all along. They found Aaliyah trapped in a cocoon of dark energy, her face pale and her eyes hollow. Surrounding her were the feeders, shadowy, grotesque figures with glowing eyes and elongated limbs. Chapter 7. The Final Battle. The girls fought valiantly, using shards of broken mirrors as weapons. Maya realized that the feeders were weakened by light and used a flashlight to drive them back. Sarah, summoning a courage none of them expected, sacrificed herself to distract the creatures, while Maya and Rhea freed Aaliyah. In a desperate move, Maya shattered the largest mirror, causing the realm to collapse. They barely escaped, dragging Aaliyah back through the portal. Chapter 8. Aftermath. The girls survived, but they were forever changed. Aaliyah was withdrawn, her once bright personality dimmed. Sarah was never seen again, her sacrifice ensuring the others' survival. The authorities shut down Serenity Hall, but the official report cited structural issues as the reason. Maya returned home, haunted by the experience but determined to warn others. She wrote an article about the events, but no one believed her. Years later, Serenity Hall stood abandoned, its windows reflecting the sunset. In one of them, a shadow moved, a reminder that the feeders were never truly gone. Moral. The story teaches the importance of respecting boundaries and heeding warnings, even when they seem irrational. It also highlights the strength found in unity and the sacrifices people make for those they care about. Some truths are better left undiscovered, as curiosity can lead to devastating consequences. Story 2. Street Killer. A True Horror Story. Introduction. In the quiet town of East Hollow, urban legends thrived like whispers in the dark. Among them was the chilling tale of the street killer, a shadowy figure said to stalk deserted streets after midnight, preying on lone wanderers. While many dismissed it as a myth, the tale gained traction when people began disappearing under eerily similar circumstances. Emily Carter, a young investigative journalist, saw an opportunity in the mystery. Skeptical yet intrigued, she decided to debunk the legend for her upcoming article. What began as a simple exploration of a local ghost story would soon spiral into a horrifying descent into truth. The story. Part 1. The Beginning of the Mystery. Emily interviews locals who had their own encounters with the street killer. An old man recalls hearing footsteps that followed him until he turned to find no one there. A mother shares how her son swore he saw a shadowy figure beckoning him from the street. Dismissive of these accounts, Emily sets out to investigate Killer's Alley, the supposed epicenter of the disappearances. Armed with a flashlight, recorder, and her skepticism, she ventures into the foggy night, unaware that someone, or something, is watching her. Part 2. The First Encounter. As Emily explores, she finds chilling graffiti. He walks where shadows linger. Dismissing it as teenage vandalism, she continues her investigation. The air grows colder, and an unnatural silence envelops the alley. She begins hearing faint footsteps that aren't hers. The sound grows louder, and when she turns, she sees a figure cloaked in darkness, standing still, its head tilting unnaturally. Panicking, Emily flees. The figure doesn't chase her, but whispers something inaudible as she runs. When she listens to her recorder later, the whispers are clear. Don't turn back. Part 3. The Killer's Curse. Through deeper research, Emily learns the story of Marcus Hale, a vagrant who was wrongfully accused of murder and lynched by a mob decades ago in that very alley. Before his death, Marcus cursed the street, vowing to become the darkness and seek revenge on anyone who wandered alone. The legend takes a sinister turn when Emily discovers the victims weren't just random. They all had a connection to the town's dark past. Some were descendants of the mob that killed Marcus. Others, like Emily, were investigators trying to uncover the truth. Part 4. A Deadly Game. Determined to break the curse, Emily decides to confront the entity. Armed with historical records and a makeshift plan, she returns to the alley. But Marcus's spirit is no longer the shadowy figure she encountered. It has grown stronger, feeding off fear and despair. The alley twists and warps into a nightmarish labyrinth. Ghostly figures of Marcus's victims appear, crying out for help, only to be silenced by the shadowy killer. Emily realizes she must survive until dawn without looking back, as looking back seals one's fate. Part 5. The Final Showdown. As the clock strikes midnight, Marcus confronts Emily directly. He offers her a choice: leave and let the curse continue, or stay and face him. Emily refuses to back down and recites the final words Marcus uttered before his death, hoping to set his spirit free. The alley erupts into chaos as Marcus's rage manifests into physical form. A harrowing chase ensues, with Emily narrowly evading his grasp. In a desperate move, she burns the only record tying Marcus's soul to the alley, a journal found at the site of his lynching. As dawn breaks, the alley returns to normal. Marcus's shadow fades, but his whispers linger. This is not the end. Conclusion. Emily survives and writes her article, exposing the town's dark history. But the victory is bittersweet. While the curse seems lifted, Emily notices strange shadows following her everywhere she goes, leaving her to wonder if Marcus is truly gone. Morale. The story of the street killer serves as a chilling reminder that burying the past does not erase it. Injustice, no matter how deeply hidden, will resurface, demanding acknowledgement and reparation. The only way to truly end a curse is to confront the truth, no matter how terrifying it may be. Story 3. Horny Girlfriend, a True Horror Story. Introduction. Ethan always believed he was an ordinary guy. He worked at a small graphic design firm, lived alone in a quaint little apartment, and spent weekends with his close-knit group of friends. Life was stable, predictable, maybe even a little boring. That changed the day he met Clara. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met. There was a magnetism to her, an energy that seemed to light up every room she entered. They met at a local coffee shop, where she playfully bumped into him while he was balancing his laptop and a steaming cup of black coffee. "Careful there, hero," she teased, flashing a smile that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. From that day forward, they were inseparable. Clara was everything Ethan thought he wanted in a girlfriend: funny, intelligent, and affectionate. Maybe a little too affectionate. Chapter 1. The Perfect Girlfriend. Ethan often joked to his friends about Clara's clinginess. "She's great, don't get me wrong," he told his friend Jason one evening over drinks. "But she's intense. Always wants to be around me like 24/7. Jason shrugged. "Isn't that what you wanted? A girl who actually cares?" Ethan nodded, brushing off the uneasy feeling that had been growing in his gut. Maybe Jason was right. He should be grateful for Clara's devotion. But over time, Clara's affection began to feel suffocating. She called him every hour during his workday, often demanding that he come over right after work. At first, he chalked it up to excitement. New relationships were always a whirlwind. But there was something off about the way she looked at him, like she was trying to devour him with her eyes. Chapter 2. The First Signs. One night, Ethan woke up to find Clara sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at him. "Clara," he murmured groggily. She didn't respond. Her head turned slowly, and she smiled, a wide, unsettling grin that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Go back to sleep," she whispered. Ethan's skin prickled. He wanted to ask her what she was doing, but something in her tone made him obey. He lay back down, pretending to fall asleep, though his heart was racing. The next morning, Clara acted like nothing had happened. She kissed him on the cheek and made breakfast, humming a cheerful tune. Ethan tried to convince himself that he'd imagined the whole thing, but the incidents kept piling up. One evening, while they were watching a movie, Ethan noticed Clara's reflection in the window. Her face didn't match the expression she was wearing. Her reflection was grinning maniacally, while her real face remained neutral. Chapter 3. The Weekend. Getaway. In an effort to rekindle the excitement of their early days, Clara suggested a weekend getaway to a secluded cabin in the woods. Ethan was hesitant, but Clara insisted, promising it would be romantic. The drive to the cabin was uneventful, though Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was watching him more closely than usual. When they arrived, Clara seemed oddly excited, almost giddy. "This place is perfect," she said, twirling in the clearing. "No one to bother us. Just you and me." Ethan forced a smile, trying to ignore the unease in his chest. That night, while they were sitting by the fire, Clara leaned in close, her eyes glinting in the firelight. "You know I love you, right?" "Of course," Ethan replied, though his voice wavered. "I mean it," she said, gripping his hand tightly. "I need you, Ethan, more than you'll ever know." Her nails dug into his skin, drawing blood. Ethan winced and pulled away. "Clara, you're hurting me." She stared at him for a moment before laughing softly. "Sorry. Sometimes I don't know my own strength." Chapter 4. The Revelation. The next day, Ethan woke up to find Clara missing. He searched the cabin and the surrounding woods, calling her name. He found her in a clearing, her back to him. She was chanting in a language he didn't recognize, her voice low and guttural. "Clara?" he called hesitantly. She turned to face him, and Ethan felt his blood run cold. Her eyes glowed an unnatural shade of red, and her mouth was stretched into an inhuman grin. "You shouldn't have come out here," she said, her voice layered with something otherworldly. Ethan stumbled back, tripping over a tree root. "What are you?" Clara stepped closer, her movements unnaturally fluid. "I told you, Ethan, I need you, all of you." She lunged at him, and Ethan barely managed to dodge. He ran through the woods, his heart pounding. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to get away. Chapter 5. The Escape. Ethan stumbled across an old, crumbling church deep in the woods. Desperate, he ran inside and slammed the door behind him. The church was filled with strange symbols and relics, and Ethan realized it was some sort of sanctuary. He remembered Clara once mentioning she hated religious places, though she had laughed it off at the time. As Clara approached the church, she hesitated at the threshold, snarling like a wild animal. "Come out, Ethan," she hissed. "You can't hide from me forever." Ethan spotted a dusty old book on the altar and began flipping through it frantically. He found a ritual to banish demonic entities and quickly gathered the items he needed. Clara burst through the door just as Ethan completed the ritual. She screamed as the symbols on the walls began to glow, her body writhing in agony. Chapter 6. The Final Confrontation. "Ethan, please," Clara cried, her voice shifting back to its human tone. "Don't do this. I love you." Ethan hesitated, his hands trembling. Part of him wanted to believe her, but he knew the truth. "I'm sorry," he whispered, completing the ritual. Clara let out an ear-piercing scream as her body disintegrated into ash. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. Ethan returned to town, but he was never the same. He avoided relationships, haunted by memories of Clara. He learned a painful lesson. Love can be blinding, and sometimes the people we trust the most hide the darkest secrets. Moral. Be cautious with your trust, even in love. Not everything or everyone is as like seems.